Hello, I'm Joshy. I'm a professor of finance at Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Today, we are actually going to deliberate on an important issue. How do we equip the world of finance professionals with fair amount of understanding of markets, asset allocation, which we collectively call as financial planning? To continue on this conversation, we have two important dignitaries with me today. Mr. Dante Gori, he is the global CEO of FPSB Limited, and Mr. Krishan Mishra, he is CEO of FPSB India. The broad agenda that we have today is we know that MBA curriculum around the world teach a fair bit of finance, starting with what is the nature of financial information, financial accounting, costing, how these financial information is being converted into reports, and then what kind of financial decisions are being made, how financial assets are being valued, priced in the market. And there is a plethora of courses which deals with the cash market and the derivatives, and including the foreign currency and so on. So that actually calls into question, is there a real need for what we call as quote unquote financial planning curriculum? Because already there is enough finance being taught, both from the corporate side and from the market side. So let's begin our conversation with the very need for what we call as a very, specifically created, cured curriculum called financial planning. Is that already, there and redundant? Let's go to Mr. Dante on this question.
I think the answer is yes, there is a need. I think many of the skill sets that's taught in an MBA program are very important and necessary, especially in running an enterprise. But of course, what is not taught is many of the areas regarding personal finance and understanding the areas that impact on individuals, individuals within organizations, individuals within the retail market. And so we are seeing a trend in respect to many universities and colleges around the world that are looking to add further elements into masters and MBA programs that come from the curriculum of the CFP certification. And most of that covers those areas of personal finance. And if you think about risk management, you think about estate planning, and you think about managing one's money, including the understanding of markets, they all become important elements that can be added to the program.
So, going back a little bit on what you had been arguing that, okay, of course, a lot of finance is already covered.
Yes.
Which is focused on firms and the structure of the markets. There is, much less focus on what we call as personal finance, and how do we really have a totality of the sense of your wealth and then translate into something that you would actually live through. But on the existing investment courses, which are actually sort of focused on institutions, oh yeah, here is a hedge fund, how is it run? Here is a mutual fund, how is it run? Here is a private equity firm, how is it run? How assets are priced? And then the plethora of techniques and approaches which are actually focused on what we call as portfolio planning and implementation at multiple levels. They collectively seem to convey that sense. So the specific element that you think is missing is a personal, financial planning challenges. But I thought that's just an implementation issue, right? You may be implementing that for a firm which is actually collecting large investments. Someone may be doing it for on portfolio, but the principles are the same. So what do you see as very different when you say personal financial planning? And I also would want to know, or it would help to anyone to understand. We often say that, okay, if you don't know something, go to a professional and he will advise you. Why do we need to really have the entire world to really be equipped with what we call as financial planning skills? So on the existing knowledge and the professional hierarchy that we have set up, aren't that enough to deal with it? Or do you think there are some specific elements which everyone needs to be made aware of the MBA students who would then go back and evangelize this in the firms that they are working, also in their own lives, right?
Right.
So, how do you see can you illustrate one of those specific examples where the MBA curriculum may be missing it, like a school like IIM Ahmedabad?
Well, again, I think there's the element of bringing those areas to life looking at an individual's personal circumstances. And I think there's two parts. You talk about a lot of the technical elements of what's taught in the MBA program, and that too is extended in the certification program, where there's technical elements, for example, of understanding insurance and risk management, so asset protection as well as wealth creation. There's those elements that are part of the program. But it's the process, the financial planning process is about understanding an individual's circumstances. So part of what is taught is not just how the markets work, but how does it impact you? What is it that you, when I say you, I'm talking about an individual, what is your aspirations and goals? What are your requirements? What are your needs? And so the program teaches one to bring that to an individual level in respect to the process of gathering that client's information, financial and otherwise, analysis of that information, and then looking at the development of personal recommendations that are personal to you, that may not fit another person, but are very unique to your circumstances in achieving an outcome. And an outcome is different than whether you're meeting a certain return on an asset class. It's actually about whether or not you're going to achieve that objective of sending your children to school, or purchasing the home, or attending an annual vacation with the family. So it's bringing that context to life. The technical learnings in the MBA program are great foundations for that. But the application of that and the further knowledge of individual circumstances and individualization of preparing a plan and recommendations is what our course brings to the program.
Yeah, so in matching one's own asset allocation across different asset classes to your personal objectives, which are very unique, what kind of house you want to set up, where do you want to live, what kind of life you want to live, where do you want to send your children to education, what kind of vacationing would you like to have, what you would like to leave back to your progenies, variety of circumstances and questions come up. In dealing with the challenges, very often we say that, okay, how do I educate someone? Oh, there is, fair amount of principles that are seen. I can really see these are the 5 things to follow. These are the 2 frameworks to apply. These are the 3 contexts which will fit everyone. Then education becomes easy. In my own sense, being in academia for 2 decades, teaching finance, the sense that I have is, why is it possibly that we are missing such an element if it is recognizably missing? Is that, how do I teach this? This seems to be very different for X, Y, Z. And then does it make sense? Can we really look at and iterate through 100 cases? It may be difficult. So how do you think this can be delivered? One can easily appreciate the fact that there is a lot of value in saying, okay, look at this individual. Needs are different. The way in which the needs will roll out in life, they are very different. And the individual's own social setup is different. What social insurance you have, that is also very unique. But if we have to really orchestrate through such unique instances, how do we plan to really inculcate that down through what we call an industrialized process of education, right?
Sure.
Where you have a curriculum, there is a teaching method, you train teachers, then they actually go out and deliver it.
Yeah.
So can you just elaborate on, how it is being done? As you recognize as professionals, I fully respect. As professionals, you respect that advice has to be really effective and meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, again, the any course or program can only go so far, and the main objective is the principles and process of practice. So, to your point, the program serves 2 components, and in fact, let me take a step back. Actually, if you think about our structure, there are three elements that form the pillars of what we believe is important in respect to delivering, in our case, a professional designation like the CFP certification. And that's knowing, being, and doing. So knowing is your knowledge domains. Okay, and all that elements that we've spoken about, do you have the technical training and understanding of all these components, and that's the knowing. Then there's the doing, which is the practice of financial planning. So to your point, how do you take that technical knowledge and put it into practice in the development of a financial plan? And again, this is the concept and the training and the practice of delivering. And of course, every person's circumstances are different, but the process is the same. The financial planner will go through the same 6-step financial planning process in delivering, taking the technical knowledge they have about markets and the circumstances of the client and try to apply a personalized recommendation and plan for the individual. And then there's the being, okay, which is really important. And that's about the ethical conduct and behavior of the individual. I mean, again, having a qualification is one thing. Having a professional obligation to your client is really important, and hence the client first requirement, where you need to place the interest of the client ahead of all else. So hence the personalization of that. Most of that comes through experience as well. I mean, there's again, the training can only do so much, but it's the application of that's really important. So hence the individualization element of delivering all the learnings into a situation that can help individuals across that process. So it's a combination of things. That's why our program requires experience as well as the education. We have the 4 E's of examination, education, ethics, and experience. All of those combined deliver the professional designation.
No, I'm enlightened to see the description that you are able to trifurcate the whole thing into knowing, doing, and being. Now, as educational institutions, we often really very strong on doing the knowing part. The doing and the being is far away from us. So, how do you think the professional entities like you, FPSB, would want to really tie up with institutions to really evangelize and inculcate this knowledge into curriculum of MBA programs? Do you have any specific plans to really create an outreach and make effort towards sort of embedding inside the MBA curriculum this kind of framework, so that at least the knowing is reasonably covered, and the being and then doing, of course, one can really follow it within your practice and set up courses for your practitioners and so on. Yeah. Is there any effort? What kind of effort?
Yeah, and look, and I'll defer to Krishan specifically about what's happening here, but at a global level, it has been a key component of the certification program. And just to put into perspective for the audience, the CFP program is 52 years old globally. 52 years. It was commenced out of the US. The first group of certificates was in 1973. 44 individuals graduated for the first time in the certification program. And since then, and it was through the College of Financial Planning in the US, since then, there are now hundreds of education providers that we engage with around the world, 28 territories, about ensuring the knowing element of the program is embedded and delivered consistently around the world. But it's very clear that the element of doing the practice is something that is an important element of the knowledge, an extension of the knowledge. And in many programs, the integration of some sort of internship or workplace programming or experience development is now becoming more alive and of interest to education providers and, of course, to our organisations in respect to bringing that into the program. And again, I know there's efforts been happening here in India to do that as well.
Right. So I think, with that kind of an effort, maybe it becomes, much more easier for educational institutions to really, make what is, otherwise very difficult to deliver.
Yes.
Something that is actually, could be delivered. You were actually talking about, the whole cycle of financial planning to be covered. But one has always this question, right? Because financial planning brings a very personal element. And that element is actually something which is going to serve, somebody will take into account somebody's lifespan, somebody's health span, somebody's wellness span, and then we can really keep adding layers and layers. So I was just wondering, you being a global organization, in your own experience, what could be working in the US? Because you have a different kind of lifespan there, you have a different kind of wellness span there, health span. So therefore, what kind of needs would arise? How long will you actually accumulate wealth? All that seem to vary. Krishan, tell us, how do you think, is the global context really very applicable in a country, middle income country like India, where your, wealth span possibly is significantly shorter than your lifespan? And your wellness span may be slightly better than the rest of the world, because we still believe in a very strongly socially closely knit society. How do you see these principles being applied globally, and how portable are they to India?
Sure. Thank you, Joshi sir, for asking me this question. And I'll add a couple of points here that if you look at financial planning, a lot of people have got a myth that it is about managing money. However, it is managing life. And when we say managing life, life has got its own ups and downs, right? And every time you need money to manage, whether it's a positive moment or negative moment in life, you'll need money to take care of that. Now, this is a global phenomenon. As a society, as India, we have been a society wherein we used to earn money first and then worry where to spend. And now we have become a society wherein we actually spend money first and then worry from where will I earn and repay. In fact, there's access to plethora of financial products in the country, and people are not aware because advice is coming from all the places. There are so many people who are actually influencing us, whether it's social media or our uncle, father, mother, brother, sister, everyone. Now, practically when it comes to your own money, you should not believe anyone. And this is a phenomenon across the world. Now, it's not that in India only social media influencers are influencing us. It's happening in various parts of the world. And if you look at whether it is investments, whether it is budgeting, saving, or protecting, which is about your insurance. And further to that, it is about creating that legacy and retirement, which is a common factor around the world. Only thing which differs is the compliances and taxes that we have from one country to another. The market behaviors might differ slightly. However, when it comes to the principles, in my view, the principles more or less remains the same. The processes remain the same. It is more about we getting disciplined and focusing on this area, which has been a missing area. Why it was missed is that it was never taught to us, because it was never a part of the education system, whether in school education or college, university, or a professional program like an MBA. Now, we thought that, okay, why shouldn't we bring this particular aspect in MBA curriculums? Because what happens is, once I become a professional, I might be managing my organization really well, but when it comes to my own personal finance, I struggle. And I can tell you that there are so many such examples wherein CEOs, CFOs, CHROs, they might be leading their organizations really well. But for their own personal finances, they don't know what to do. And in fact, personal finance is so personal that in case I have more money, I'd never tell anyone. If I don't have money, I don't want to tell, because then people will question me, then why don't you have money? So that's why it is personal. And in one family, a husband will have a different plan, wife will have different, kids will have a different plan, and everybody will have their own plan. So you should not trust your husband or wife or your father, mother for the advice. You have to trust your professional only. And that's why it is needed for anyone and everyone.
Yeah. I think, starting with our initial conversation of being context specific to being generalizable.
Yeah.
And then, Krishan is almost arguing that, the principles are globally consistent. But one must, with all humility, admit that there are very unique situations, because the inflation in India is very different from elsewhere.
Yeah.
The unpredictability of your income is very different from elsewhere. The extent of health coverage you have is very different. So therefore, one can't ever imagine that things will remain the same. For example, the withdrawal rates from your corpus in India has to be a different rate than what would be, say, withdrawal rates in the US. Right?
Correct. So when I say that, it is more about the principles of savings, principles of budgeting,
right,
principles of protecting,
right,
principles of retirement and planning.
Yeah.
So the corpus and withdrawals, that's why I said that it is not about only money management. It is more about managing the life. And that's why it remains the same.
So while agreeing to that, my broader principle or concern that we can commonly share is that what is it that we can do to really, of course, there are very contextual elements, and finally training the professionals to deliver a meaningful and effective, and individually suitable plan for each one. So obviously that will get in a lot of contextual inputs, no doubt.
Yeah.
So is there some way you're thinking, how do we really make professionals equipped with financial planning education, which is reasonably contextual? Is FPSB India thinking about anything to deal with that?
Yes, and I think one of the initiatives that we have taken is to launch a program with you, which is a executive program in financial planning and investment advisory services. Now, this program has been curated for the middle level professionals. The reason is that when we met some of the organizations and the large financial services conglomerates, they said that when we hire an MBA, we have to put them through a CFP certification later. In case we have hired a CFP professional, we have to put them through an MBA curriculum later, because if they want to grow and become a leader later on, they need to have the knowledge. So we said that why don't we marry both of them? So the marriage is the executive program that we have launched, and this program will actually help people understand the nuances of finance at the core level, as well as the nuances of financial planning. From investments to retirement, all the levels would be covered, and they would come out with 2 certifications ultimately, and not only certifications for their professional career, however, it will lead to a life skill which will help them manage their own lives better. So it has got both the aspects which are there. So one is certification from IIM plus a certification from FPSB India, the CFP certification, and third is the life skill element, which will help them manage their own lives better. It has got its element of they either looking forward to a better career within the organization, getting promoted and looking forward to more opportunities. Second is in case they wish to practice. Yeah, they have an opportunity. They can start their own practice and help the clients in doing so. So, as I mentioned, towards the noble profession and the noble cause, I think this kind of a marriage will create a strong set of new age professionals which are needed for the future of this industry.
Yeah, we acknowledge that there is a increasing need that professionals have in being equipped well to really deal with planning for clients who are becoming increasingly sophisticated, markets which are becoming increasingly volatile, and social structure which is rapidly evolving. Right? So obviously there is a need, which is why the context in which IIMA also launched this program. But having said that, our programs like this and allowing them to practice, I think in your triad, it takes care of the knowing and the doing. But what is it that as a professional community which we are going to deal with, and how are we going to really make sure that the being, which is really very monumental in the way in which the client is going to feel it, because you are actually entrusting someone with all the wealth to really chart out a course for you, so that the welfare that you have, your lifestyle is being portable across your life without compromising it significantly, and you are able to really achieve not just wealth, the well-being that you want, and also leave the community around you happy, and also leave them what is deserving to them, right? So you're trying to really get through a very complex maze of being able to solve, in my language, you're doing a linear programming with multiple objectives and constraints in place. That's a very hard one. So that's where the ethics and the consistency and all that becomes important. So as an FPSB as a CFP professionals, how are you really preparing them to deal with that part?
Yeah, well, if I may, I think there's a couple of things there which you raised, which I think is really important. The CFP program, though it's global, the program and the certification is globally recognised. Our key to our success, quite frankly, is that it's localized. I mean, your point about the fact that markets in North America are different to Europe, to Asia, and etc., and then within regions they are different again, is really important, and hence why our program, though the knowing, being, and doing is consistent in structure and formation, the knowing is very specific to your local territory. So taxes, retirement planning, inflation, economic environment, political environment, are all factors in which a CFP professional will learn in their jurisdiction to equip them to be able to manage the finances and provide the advice to someone in their community. The second piece, so that's one. So in terms of fundamental training, our difference is we are global and local. Two, FPSB Limited and our affiliate network organisations have responsibility of fostering the financial planning profession. So whilst knowledge is important to equip someone with the certificate, we have an obligation to ensure that the practice of financial planning is delivered and there is a community of practice and sharing and learning. So what does best practice look like? So I mean, the textbook said to do it this way, but what's evolving in practice? What's changing? How is AI and technology impacting the way in which you deliver advice, for example? That is the domain of the professional bodies in which you do continual professional development. So once you obtain the certification, it's really important that your knowledge is maintained. You're upskilled in the areas of practice that is changing and evolving, because if you were certified 20 years ago, the environment has very much changed since then. And again, there is a global element to that professional development, but there's very much local elements of that, very critically, because changing in regulation and laws and taxes are the fundamental reason why you've got to remain upskilled. So I think that's really important for us in terms of the fact that there is an ongoing requirement and effort to ensure that the individuals are continually upskilled in knowledge, upskilled in best practice in terms of delivery of advice. And then the final point is once you create a professional community of CFP certificates, in our case, there is that thing of being ethical standards. The toughest critics on whether or not you are being ethical, client first, and holding a fiduciary duty is actually your peers. And so therefore that community of delivering for your client is something that we take very seriously, and we uphold that standard against ourselves.
Thank you. I think, that is, professionally one need to really build that strong culture in which people are self-censoring. There is, because you have fear of retribution from your community of fellow professionals, that if I do wrong advice, if I do compromise on ethics, that's actually going to have not a sanctioning of a threat or anything of that kind, but the loss of reputation.
Right.
And that can be really very severe and significant. I think that's a recognition one need to get. But having said that, in markets that are characterized today, as we speak, we know that it's almost impossible for someone to say that, I don't know enough. That, of course, we know that we have been saying that. But today we have to say that we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So is there any way in which, the professionals are being prepared to... These are situations in which you may have to throw, to rely on your strength of your relationship with the client.
Right.
To deal with that kind of situation, right? So what is the soft skills and other training that is required, beyond the rote knowledge and the ethics and so on, what do you think is the kind of preparation that you're doing for professionals to deal with, to acquire what we call the behavioral skills?
Yeah. And again, you're exactly right. And this has come up through our own review and examination of the curriculum that we have and that we deliver. And a couple of years ago, it was identified that, a stronger presence of behavioral economics, behavioral sciences, what was needed and is required. And in fact, has been developed by experience, but not through academic training. And so as of 1 July this year, we have issued a requirement that all courses around the world delivering CFP certification now need to include psychology and financial planning as a knowledge domain to ensure that all future CFP professionals are trained in this area. But of course, all existing, the 230,000 that we have worldwide need to be upskilled. And so through professional development and CPD programs and courses, and other initiatives will be ensuring that all certificates are upskilled in the area of psychology and financial planning, behavioral economics, etc. Because to your point, I think there was a discussion, when markets go, normally sometimes you don't hear from clients when the markets are doing well, but when the markets are not doing well, you get the phone call. And part of that is managing your clients. And, CFP professionals know their clients and will probably tell you which clients will call. They already know because they understand their behaviour. And I know that's a very simplistic example, but in fact, it becomes a lot more technical in its delivery in respect to, understanding biases, etc., and your own biases, even in terms of what you instill on your clients in respect to recommendations and advice. Awareness of that is really important, but understanding your clients' biases and your clients' relationship with money and behaviour is really, really important. And we haven't traditionally, as I said, academically had that taught as a skill set as part of the knowledge domain. That is now coming in, and so this will add to the value and I think to the expertise of practitioners when dealing with their clients, both initially but ongoing.
And just to add to this, see, when I say that I'm a CFA professional, the first thing which comes to your mind is that, I know I have got the right technical knowledge, right? Because I'm already qualified. However, when it comes to psychology, I think it is really very important that we ask the right questions. It's more about learning those probing skills. Because if you're a doctor, you need to probe well, right? It is not about you providing the solution. Solutions will not come if, in case you are not able to probe the patient and understand them. So in the similar way, the financial doctor needs to understand the probing skills well, and then accordingly empathize and understand emotionally the client's needs, and then accordingly give them the solution. So that plays a very important role. And as an organization, we are committed towards this by giving them the right kind of training so that they get prepared through the continuous professional development, as Dante has mentioned.
Sure, I think one can understand that, one need to really be a good judge of the individual and read the mind and, then build on with that. Without it, you can't, the solutions that you create are vacuous because it has to really depend on implied and expressed desire of the client and translate it into goals of different kinds, and some of it is based on wealth, and then you lay out a plan which is for markets and so on. I guess it is really exciting to see that we are making progress on this. But one last posture which I thought, having come this far, may be useful for the audience to know what could be like a model curriculum look like. What kind of topics, if you were to really think of a list, what would that sound like?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's one, definitely I know the team, especially our certification team, really looks at on an ongoing basis. And we take, there's a lot of inputs to that because the practitioners and what's happening in the field is important, but what's happening in the environment around us is also really important. So, without perhaps sort of going through a laundry list, I would imagine that a future curriculum adjustments could include things like, the use and implementation of AI in delivery of advice, as an example. I think many practitioners would say to us, and have actually said to us through surveys about the fact that they feel that one of the areas of their knowledge gap is they understand AI to the extent of what it's doing, but if I'm going to use AI in my practice, if I'm going to use AI with my clients, I feel ill-equipped and ill-trained to understand exactly what AI is doing and how to use it, and what is best practice. Like, what should a financial planning practitioner be doing or using AI in practice? So I think that's a particular area. Go back a few years ago, crypto and the introduction of non-traditional financial products in the marketplace that the regulators are not yet regulating, but every client that walks in the door wants you to talk about and recommend to them, such as crypto. And there will be future products like that, digital products that will come in the marketplace, alternatives that aren't regulated and hence and aren't traditionally taught in the curriculum. So being able to predict the future of what they are, I think would be a great advancement. But as I mentioned before, the one key big adjustment that we've made is this behavioural elements, because again, if you were to ask me the question, what does financial advice and financial planning look like in the future? It is going to, I believe, shift from the creation of the financial plan to the implementation of the financial plan, and financial planners will shift from being technicians to being consultants and coaches in assisting our clients in implementing their life plan and navigating that world with them. And for that, there is a new and different skill sets that will need to be further developed and trained in the program going forward.
Thank you, Dante and Krishan. I think it's quite exciting to know about the efforts that you are driving to make sure that theory doesn't end where it ends. Rather, it is followed with practice. As we say, practice without theory is madness, and theory without practice is vacuous. I think there is a great opportunity to converge and blend theory and practice, and that's where professional experience organizations like you can help business schools around the world and curate a curriculum, both for students and for professionals to do their continuing education. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.